Yeah, we're coming at you a little early tonight. We've got the team in place now, and so stand by for a good program. Normally come to you at 9. Tonight we have responsibilities we have to take care of, so stand by for a good show tonight with Peeking Wilbur, David Moulton, and Tony Barnhart sizing up the future of college football and what's ahead for the Gators. We'll try to figure that out. Somebody let me know if we do, will you? Buddy Martin Show is on the air.
It's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking. But be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Welcome. It's a little early for you tonight. I'm sorry about that, but we had to change schedules, and we're glad to be able to bring you these fine guests and the co-hosts. We normally have sweet and sour at 9 o'clock. Tonight, we'll go early. Let's get with right the program right now and go to the orange and blue room and see if she's there. She usually is. I guess she would be tonight. That's not David Moulton, by the way. This would be Peeking Wilbur right here. Good evening to you, Allie. How you doing?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm scrambling. Can't you tell?
I'm sure you being willing to.
Good to talk to you again. Gosh, I'm so lost with what is going on in college football. I said today, I told a friend of mine, I've never known less about Florida Gators than right now. It feels that way. And there's so much going on. My brain doesn't work that fast anymore. So I'm thinking, okay, it's time to vote for the Heisman. Wait a minute. What else is going on around here? I mean, unbelievable. You could write volumes about this, Allie, and talk forever about what happened. Everybody's got a take. Quite frankly, I think a lot of people are kind of burned out on talking about poor Florida State and Georgia, and I get it. They did get screwed, okay? But that's kind of what this was going to happen. I mean, the way it was set up, it was bound to happen, and it did. So just a short version, Allie, saw a couple of your comments, by the way, and the short version of what just happened.
For Florida State or the transfer portal?
Let's just say college football. Make it broad, okay?
What
just happened? Catch me up. Tell me. Explain to me, okay?
We're in this just crazy, wild, wild west era of college football. We do have the craziness of what happened with the playoffs, from the weekend we're all kind of reeling from. And, I do think that Florida State is not one of the top 4 teams in the country, but I also feel terrible for Florida State because when you go 13-0, you do everything that's asked of you, and then you're essentially told that's not enough. It's definitely difficult, but we were setting ourselves up for this when we had 4 spots and 5 Power 5 conferences. Because the flip side is, if you decide to leave, let's say, Alabama out of it, what you're saying is you played a harder schedule, so you didn't run the table. You lost a game, but you played a much harder schedule than Florida State, but we're going to penalize you for playing that harder schedule. Alabama's 13-0 with Florida State's schedule too. So I do think some of this goes back to the fact that there's just not conference parity. And that makes this insanely difficult to figure out who the 4 best are, who the 4 most deserving are, all of that stuff. At the end of the day, the 4 teams in it are 4 teams that I think are better teams than Florida State is at this moment, but that doesn't make it hurt any less for them. And as far as the transfer portal, this is just craziness. We are watching people like Dylan Gabriel's a great example. We're watching somebody who threw 42 touchdown passes for Oklahoma this year, lit it up, had an incredible season, has 1 year of eligibility left. Why in the world are you jumping in the portal again? It doesn't, and is there greener grass than Oklahoma? I mean, I think there's probably only a very small handful of schools. And then the scenario has to be perfectly right for you to jump in and play for it to be more valuable for you. Princely Umanmielen said today that he's entering into the transfer portal. I think many of us expected that he would go pro, so didn't expect him to be on Florida's roster next year. But I don't think we expected him to go somewhere else. And what does that say about the state of our program? There's way more questions than answers today, I feel like.
A lot. Look to your right where your grandfather's picture, I believe this to your right there. Tell people who that is right there.
That is my grandfather, Scotty Peak. He played, I believe, 49 to 52, but I'd have to fact check that.
You're right. I remember him. I do vaguely. I was a kid, little bitty boy, but I do remember him.
He left for a year to fight in a war and then came back, actually, which is pretty interesting. But diehard Gator. Love the University of Florida more than anybody I've ever met in my entire life. Ran track at Florida too, has a record because the event is no longer run. It's the 220 on the curve. And yeah, so we keep him there because he's, why my family loves the University of Florida.
I love that. You have like 900 peaks up there out of your family. And here's the thing. Turn around now and act like you're talking to him and tell him, you can talk in the camera, but talk to him and tell him what just happened. And you made a little tell today in your comment when you posted, I'm all for kids doing what's best for them and their careers. Boy, what they should do, but miss me with a Gator for life when you hit the transfer portal. Gator for life.
Well, yes,
I know. I get it.
That's happening in college football. We essentially have mercenaries that are playing for university for 1 year, maybe 2 years.
Hard guns.
Yeah. Yes. And it makes it, I think it's going to substantially change the way that we cheer for college football programs and how bought in we are. As fans, we're with this team win or lose, right? We love this program. We will be a fan.
You hope so. You like to think that, but I don't know.
The lifers, like us, are a fan when you're 0-10 and are a fan when you're 12-0. And and we like to think that the players that we root for are the same way. It's why we say in all kinds of weather, right? Like we expect that they love this program like we love this program. And I know that sometimes that's idealistic, and we know that people come to college for more reasons than just because they want to play for the logo on the front of the jersey. But nobody's playing for the jersey logo anymore. Everybody's playing for the name on the back, it feels like. And it's almost like it kills me when players post that they're leaving and whatever else, and then they sign it Gator for life. But you're not. You're only choosing to leave. And that's okay. That's what you need to do. But you're not a
Gator for life. No, we don't want that. I agree with you on that. So it's hard to discern what is real. I don't blame the kids for getting paid, by the way. I understand that. If that's what they're doing, they get a check. But it's hard to unravel. We're going to bring David Moulton in here in a second. The other night, I was trying to do a show. We had the transfer portal going on. We had NIL deals going off. We had teams being left out of the playoff that should have been in it. And I don't know the answer because there were 6 teams. There were 4. There were 4 spots. We knew. I told my friend today, it was like, you got a car with 200,000 miles on it. At some point, it's going to break down. This broke down just now, right in front of our eyes, and it was pretty bad, ugly, and it was unfair to many people, unfortunately. But we'll get into all the other details of politics, how the ACC crew blocked the 12-team playoff, and now their team gets left. All that. Let's do this real quick. Let's pay the bills with David Moulton David Moulton won't pay the bills. No, let's pay the bills. Come back and get David Moulton. Jeffrey Meldon, a lot of people are pretty excited about this basketball team, and the performance against Florida State and other games that they've had since really have put Florida squarely on the map. And this is a new bunch, very exciting players. I know you get a chance to watch them up close there. You sit right in there, right next to the coach. I got a feeling you're whispering plays to him, Jeffrey.
Yeah, well, it's really fun because I've been going to the basketball games for 35, 40 years now. And being able to sit in the front row behind the coach is kind of cool because you see him diagramming the plays and everything. Plus, you get to see the players. These are young kids, 18 to 22-year-old kids. And I'm so impressed with the Gator basketball team.
Fun to watch. They got some good players, a lot of new names. Go and check them out. I was really impressed with what they did against Florida State. And some big guys, and they put the hammer down the Seminoles. Good start. Let's hope it's going to be an interesting season. If I don't talk to you again, have a happy holiday season. Jeffrey, look forward to a great 2024 and being together with you and your wife to celebrate some special occasions.
Yeah, and buddy, I want to tell our Gator fans out there that Todd Golden is the real deal. Okay. In 1 year, he's put together this really tall team that's going to out-rebound just about everybody that they play. They've got some great shooters. We got 3 or 4, guards in there that are awesome.
Yep.
And I predict that the Gators are going to be a ranked team by the end of the season, and that you wait and see. They're going to make some noise around March Madness.
Sounds exciting. You'll be right there to report from courtside. Give us the inside scoop, Jeffrey.
Yeah, and January 6th is Meldon Law Day. We're playing Kentucky at the O-Dome. It's Meldon Law Day. We've got special shirts for everybody.
Giving stuff away again like you do all over the place. You're giving stuff away.
But it's going to be it's Kentucky, buddy. What do you got to say?
What are you going to do? Be a big night.
The home game against Kentucky is always the big game of the year.
Maybe I'll come sit with you tonight. So,
okay, January 6th, buddy.
All right, Jeffrey, have a happy holiday season. The best to you. And don't forget, Meldon Law, they do not back down. And they wish you a happy holiday season.
Yeah.
All right, Meldon Law. Thanks, Jeffrey. Let's go over to the Orange and Blue room. I think our buddy's hanging out there. David Moulton, he's early tonight. He likes early because he gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning and, he needs to sleep. He gets grouchy when he goes to sleep. And maybe you'll be in a good mood tonight. Hello there, Sour. How you doing?
I'm fine, buddy, and good to see you, Allie.
Hey, David. How are you?
I'm good.
So you heard Allie talking to her grandfather about asking questions. I wanted to show you in a picture of what I was feeling like the other day when I was doing this column about what in the world's going on. And this is a graphic our graphic department did. And I don't know what you get out of that, but look at that. That's how my brain felt. I couldn't keep up with what was going on. It's just too much, too many things. I don't know. Maybe you guys can sort it out for me. Let's start with you, David. What just happened this week?
Well, I think the committee made a really wise business decision. I do. Now, there are for the first time, there were more than 4 teams that were really worthy. I mean, I know in 2014 you had Baylor and TCU who got leapfrogged by Ohio State, but there really was very little noise made about that. And then Ohio State went on as the 4th seed to win the national title, and that thing just ended. But there were 6 very worthy teams here. I mean, there were. I mean, you could make a strong case even for Georgia. They haven't lost a regular season game in over 3 years. I mean, 2-time defending champs. They lose 1 game by 3 points to Alabama. So you knew somebody was really going to get the shaft. I would have given it to Alabama. I would have. I would not have kept the 13-0 team out. The one thing, Allie, that I would say is that the Alabama team of now would have gone 13-0 with Florida State's schedule, but Alabama would have lost to LSU week 1. And I think Alabama might have even lost at Clemson in mid-September. Okay, so I don't think that now the Alabama team now could win the national title, and you could argue this is the greatest coach of all time's best coaching job the last 10 weeks. You really could, but it doesn't sit well with me, and it has nothing to do with the name of the team. I'd be saying this if it was Ole Miss, if it was Wake Forest. It really doesn't sit well with me. So a team can lose a game, but a team can't lose their quarterback. Also, I don't think you should hand out the playoff bids based on what you think is going to happen going forward. To me, the bids are earned over the last 13, 14 weeks. So it didn't sit well with me. I didn't think it was going to happen at all when I was leaving Mercedes-Benz Stadium after Alabama had won. I was sitting in the Atlanta airport watching the second quarter of the ACC championship, and I'm like, wow, this is not a good product. All right. And at least it entered my mind. Like, are they really, are they going to use this clause and do it? And then I will say, when I was watching the first 15 minutes of the reveal show, I mean, Herb Street knew, and I thought he tipped it. And then when Texas was put third, you knew Texas and Alabama were going together. They were not going to put Florida State in between Texas and Alabama. So either it was going to be Florida State 3, Texas, Alabama 4, 5, or the vice versa. So once Texas was 3, I went, I'll be damned.
So I knew that Florida State wasn't going to go, I think, the morning of the championship weekend. It's that Saturday, because on College Game Day, Heather, what's her last name? Dinich. She said in a conversation, a walk and talk, she called it, with the commissioner, the athletic director of NC State, Boo, when she said in her conversation with him, he said the most deserving is not in the committee's lexicon. And that was what she chose to talk about. And there is a difference between most deserving and best, for sure. Sometimes they're the same, but not always. And I thought it was just such an interesting thing that she harped on. And that was the first time when I was like, they're going to leave Florida State out. But this is where I think the committee went wrong. I think even though I don't love the idea of a 13-0 team being left out, there was more deserving teams than there were spots. So somebody was going to get their heart broken. I think my issue is, if you are going to use the injured player, which we can argue right or wrong whether that should be in there, it is in there. It's in their guidelines. They should never have moved Florida State up after they beat Florida. Because
totally
quarterback play was not good. Rodemaker wasn't good. I mean, we didn't even know he had a concussion. I mean, if we were in the stands, we knew he had a concussion, but it hadn't been announced yet that he had a concussion. So that didn't even factor in. But and that's the part that makes me think it's for ratings, that you don't say anything. Totally. And that's where
without question it's for ratings.
The other thing is, and I don't know, Ali, if you agree, I think they made a mistake if you were going to leave Florida State out, I think they needed to move them to 7. Okay. Yep. They needed to say, listen, it's all, and they made the mistake by having Florida State in after the backup quarterback's performance. I mean, they could have determined right then and there, this isn't one of the 4 best teams.
Correct. And they actually even went on to make quotes saying stuff like, we know Florida State's more than just one player. There's 85 guys out there.
Right.
Don't come and say those things. And my assumption is maybe they thought it was just going to take care of itself and then they didn't have to be the bad guy. But they only did it halfway. If you're not going to have Florida State in the top 4, Georgia's better than Florida State is at this current moment.
And you could argue Ohio State even. I would have been in the room saying, if we're leaving them out, let's move them out.
I think you can argue Ohio State. I think you can even argue Oregon is better.
I don't think you could do it with 2 losses. I could see them if they had put them at the end of the undefeateds and 1 losses at number 7.
Sure. And that's the part incredibly frustrating to Florida State fans. And I'll tell you this, I feel awful for the Florida State team. I mean, fans are fans, and that's a different thing. But for these players, my heart breaks for them. But for the Florida State fans, I can see why this is inconsistent. You only partially applied your logic and your rules, and you should have just broken their heart earlier.
And let's be honest, it wasn't a perfect storm. It was a perfect storm. Yeah. And they used the one thing they could hang their hat on, because they did not want to leave the SEC out. And the SEC representative just happened to be Alabama. And the reason why also leaving them at 5 invites us to think conspiracy theory, nefarious business decision, is because ESPN will save $150 million by Alabama being in as opposed to Florida State. The ratings will be significantly better. They will be able to charge significantly more. And if Alabama wins the semifinal, look out. So, I mean, you can't, and let's face it, in the last 18 months, we've seen, guys, that Fox and ESPN are running the sport. So how are we not to think that behind closed doors, Saturday night and Sunday morning, that ESPN didn't make this decision.
Well, you could pick a conspiracy theory, whatever you want to, and I want to get this.
Well, but that's not conspiracy, though. Those are facts, buddy.
I
Fox and ESPN have changed.
David.
Fox moved those 4 teams to the Big Ten. ESPN moved Texas and Oklahoma into the SEC. I mean, they're running the sport, buddy.
Well, let me put mine in there. If you're going to be a visionary and be able to predict how a team is going to do because they lost their quarterback, which is what they did, they ruled out any upsets, said you can't play, it's not going to happen. Then why don't you look at the situation in Michigan and say, how about a team that didn't have its coach for 3 games, and got caught in a cheating scandal? Does that affect it? They shouldn't even been in there. They should have been out with the cheating scandal. But you see, they can't. The cheating scandal in Michigan. If you're going to, what is it? If they're going to play judgment, if they're going to place judgment on these teams and their programs, what do you do on a team that barely should scrape its way in because what the problem it got into could have cost them the whole thing? That could have been eliminated. My point is, don't start judging teams and being visionary and predicting how they're going to do. Now, you're right. Georgia is one of the 3 best teams in the country. We agree on that. If anybody got screwed, Georgia got screwed. They dominated. Florida State got a bad draw, unfortunately. You can see it coming, unfortunately. But whatever reason they use for dropping them, and I understand you can only pick 4. Then if one of them was their quarterback's no good, why do they start judging rosters and players? I know everybody says it was convenient. You know why? Because they wanted the best game, the best ratings. And maybe that's what it's about. Maybe that is what it's about. It's about the ratings. So there are many, many things we can pick apart on this. And many reasons we can. Let's hear from the Georgia standpoint, though, because I want to get Tony Barnhart on here and see how that's playing in Athens. But I imagine not too well. And yet, I think they've conducted themselves, Georgia fans, as far as I can tell, Allie and David, pretty well, considering when you look at what the whining at Florida State has gone on. The
come on now. Listen,
wait a minute. This is
you can't criticize. There's no way that Florida State should get any criticism here.
But you know what, David? You haven't been listening to the national media. They're all talking about it. They're all talking about Florida State.
No. But you took a shot at Florida State's fans here. I mean,
not just me,
buddy.
Not just me.
Come on, this is an epic screw job. Okay. I mean, imagine if this had happened.
Have it your way. That's my opinion. It's also the opinion of many people in national talk shows. I'm saying not just for me. I think Florida State got screwed too.
Who don't even cover college football.
No, it's not true. Anyway, let's not get lost in that. Anyway, my point is that we can find lots of reasons. I think you can say both of them got screwed, I think, in the end, but it's just the way it goes. Unfortunately, the young kids don't know that. And they don't understand. They won their games. Anyway, so let's see if we can get a hold of, see if Tony's there. Tony Barnhart's standing by. How are you, Tony? And bring him in there. Let's get the Georgia side of this thing. 'Cause I think that's, if the eye test is an accurate way of judging teams, Allie, is it? Is that an accurate way? I mean,
listen,
is that not what we use?
The playoff committee its inception. I would have stayed with the BCS system, but
apparently they don't. Apparently they didn't use it because I could see, and you could too, David. We all could see that Georgia's one of the elite teams in the country.
Yeah, I hate the eyeball test. I hate using Vegas and point spreads. I hate it all. First off, we just watched on Friday, Washington is a 10-point dog, went straight up. I just worked Monday Night Football where a 10-point dog on the road, wait for it, with a backup quarterback making his second ever start. Sound like that could have been a familiar storyline? All right. Went and won a game against a team they had no business beating. Cardell Jones leading Ohio State as the third-string quarterback. TCU, what they did to Michigan last year. Please, people bet the favorites, and Vegas keeps making more money and building bigger casinos. Don't talk to me about point spreads. That I hate eyeball test and point spreads. I want to talk resumes. I want to decide it on the field with resumes, not with point spreads and with eyeball tests. Because anybody who says they know, really, do you know how much we get wrong? And yet we're the experts and we don't know squat. Okay, give me the results on the field. That's all that should matter.
So the committee uses what? Analytics?
They use whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, right.
There's criteria that they use. The problem is that when you say, okay, these are the 10 criteria, it doesn't say strength of schedule should be 10% of your factor. Win total should be this percentage of your factor. So essentially, they can arrive at their conclusion and then look at all of the things that they're supposed to consider and decide which one they're going to use. Now, in terms of the injury, the only time that we've seen this happen during this playoff era was 2014 with Ohio State. The difference being Ohio State's backup then went into the conference championship game and put up 56 points. So when we say, they shouldn't be prognosticators, it does say you can take into consideration injuries that could affect the game. We had a sample size of what happens to Florida State without Jordan Travis, and it wasn't good. So I don't actually have an issue with them saying this is not a championship caliber team without the best player on their team, and we have this game and this game to point to as our evidence. My problem is, again, like I said before, that after they, limp past Florida with a poor quarterback performance, the committee said, oh, it doesn't matter, and moved him up. The whole thing is kind of shady. Again, I don't hate the end result, but I do hate how we got there.
Okay. We're not able to get Tony on. He might be able to hear him, but we can't see him. So let's see if we can go at this black hole and see. Tony, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine.
You're just a big black hole right now to us. That's okay.
Well, I've been called worse, so that's true. Yeah.
So Tony, say hello to David Moulton and Allie, and you can't see him, but he's in there someplace. Tony Barnhart.
Hi, David and Allie.
Hey, Tony, how are you?
Good to talk again.
Much better than I deserve.
Yeah, we're talking about the obvious, and just give us your recitation about how this went down in Athens, which can't be very pretty. What's led us there?
Yeah, I went to a party Sunday night, and a lot of Georgia people there, and they were sort of melancholy about it. This wasn't a mad crowd. The fact of the matter is Georgia had an opportunity to win and go to the playoffs, and when you get a chance to win and go to the playoffs, you don't go. I don't see Georgia got outplayed by Alabama. They were a better team, and on the grand scheme of things, is Georgia one of the top 4 teams in the country? Sure, of course they are, but they had their opportunity and did not close the deal.
Yeah, I mean, we watched a playoff game essentially on Saturday. Yeah. I mean, that is what we saw, but it does stink to know that one of the 4 best teams in the country is sitting home, even if they did have their opportunity there.
Tony,
which is why we're looking forward to the 12-game playoff, because any screw up that the committee does, you can mask over it. Because if you leave out 13, okay, but I'm just glad we're going. This was been the perfect year for a 12-team playoff, no question.
Oh my goodness! And Tony, I'm curious, did you agree, and he wasn't the only one that said it, but Gary Danielson's feeling was it would be almost ridiculous to have a playoff without the SEC champion being in it, with never mind who that SEC champion turned out to be. It's a dominant conference, the track record over the last 20 years, et cetera. Did you, if you were in the committee room, is that something that you would have said out loud going, I don't know about the other 3, but Bama's got to be in?
Well, I never thought I will say this. When I left Mercedes-Benz Stadium Saturday night, there were a lot of nervous SEC people because they were concerned that both teams were going to get shut out. And that, to me, it was hard to believe that the committee would ever do that. So at the end of the day, I'll be honest and say this. I disagree with you guys in the sense that I think the committee got it right. I think they looked at the bylaws. The bylaws do allow, and they do it in basketball all the time. You'll see a team that will drop if they lose a star player right before the start of the tournament. They'll either drop out of the tournament or drop several seeds, several lines on the bracket. So it does happen. My heart absolutely aches for the kids at Florida State. Absolutely. I mean, that footage of them getting the word and Mike Norvell just holding it just breaks your heart. But at the same token, the way that Alabama played this season, listen, Nick Saban was washed up in September. The game had passed him by. Okay, he didn't know what he was. Kirby Smart was the king of the world, and Nick Saban didn't have a clue what he was doing, and he had no quarterback. And here they are right now playing as well as any team in the country. So I agreed with the decision to move Alabama in. There was no way that the committee was going to turn around and put 2 teams from the SEC in. Not going to happen. Not going to happen at all. So I think the right 4 teams got in.
I don't think we disagree on the top 4 teams. I think I just wish they had been more straightforward with Florida State from the beginning. Don't move them up after barely beating Florida with a backup quarterback who didn't do well. Don't say things like there's 85 other guys or 84 other guys out there, like we're not concerned about one player. And then later on, 2 weeks later, use it against them.
Yep. No, you're right, Allie, about that. They never should have moved them into 4. They should have kept them at 5. And that way, if somebody jumped over them, you could explain that. So yeah, it's tough to watch a team be at 4, then win, and then drop out. But it was tough. It was tough. That's why I'm glad we're going to expand the playoff when all is said and done, because there's going to be a lot of neat things that happen next year with the playoff that I'm looking forward to.
Some people think it's poetic justice what happened, given the ACC's attempt to derail the SEC and keep 2 teams out, and then how it turned out that one of their teams got screwed. Your take on that? Have you heard much about it? And there were the anti-Greg Sankey group, apparently, as I'm told, that they tried to sort of shut him down, and it backfired on them, didn't it?
Well, what happened? The ACC has to look itself in the mirror, its commissioner and the commissioners, the other commissioners, in the sense that the system was in place to go ahead and have the playoff, and if the alliance had, I'm doing my finger quotes here, you can't see me, the alliance, exactly. They shot it down, the chance to get the 12-team playoff done in advance, and it ended up costing them, because Florida State would have obviously been in a 12-team playoff. So it is a weird situation now with Florida State. They're sitting there preaching to the world that we're looking for somewhere else, and then this happens to them. So,
well, also Florida State as a school, I feel, buddy, they're having to really bite their tongue here. Their fans may be screaming, yelling, whining, whatever you want to call it, but Florida State, I mean, they want to join the SEC, preferably, or the the Big Ten, so they can't trash the powers that be in this sport too much, because they desperately want to be adopted by one of them.
Well, just my philosophy, having done this for about 40 plus years, you don't make a living in the sport of college football by trashing the SEC.
Right.
Just not a wise career move, okay? And you knew that Greg Sankey was going to lobby for his team. You knew he was going to lobby for his team, and so did Nick. Nick Saban did one of the best lobbying jobs I've ever seen for him, because used to be he would always go, our play speaks for itself. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. You got to make the case, and he made the case, and as did Sankey, and as did Kirby Smart, because he knew the committee would be watching. It's only good. It only makes sense.
Book on that. Urban Meyer wrote the book on lobbying for your team.
Oh, absolutely. He was a master at it. So it's the way the game is played now.
And by the way, where was Jim Phillips? I mean, that 3-hour game day show, Jim Phillips certainly could have been. He would have had to get in his, took us to Atlanta. It's a short flight from Charlotte. He could have gotten back for the ACC title game. How was he not in that room for his 10 minutes on that stage? Okay, I mean, come on. ESPN's a business partner of the ACC. He could have had his 10 minutes to lobby, and he sat it out, and that was a mistake.
David, I was stunned that he was not there. I mean, this is the way the game. If Nick Saban's out there lobbying, then everybody's lobbying, and you've got them. Particularly when you go to Saban and say, "Look, this is an unprecedented lineup that we've ever had. We have never had this many undefeated teams, this many teams in the discussion at this moment in time. So you've got to do something to differentiate." And you don't think those committee members were sitting there listening to Nick Saban make his case? Because he rarely ever does it. And when he does, you have a tendency to listen. I think that was a major factor in this final decision.
I'm told that the coaches in the room were really swayed, that the coaches in the room were the ones pounding the table saying, yeah, we got to go Texas, Alabama. We got to go the quote unquote best teams that they were. And that apparently they took 2 votes. They took a vote late Saturday night before they broke up and went to bed. And then they came back kind of mid-morning Sunday, and the vote, nobody changed their mind.
Well, here was ultimately I think what the issue was. And I'm not the first person to say this. A lot of people have said it. The committee at some point became very afraid of another TCU. And what Georgia did to them in the national championship game. I mean, I heard it all summer when I was doing my little speaking engagements around the South. People said, "Would you just quit putting people like TCU into the playoffs because it doesn't work?" And I think the committee was very, very concerned that we could get another TCU. Particularly Florida State being in the situation of not having their quarterback. Great defense, great defense. But I think that was ultimately a factor as well.
I said that on Sunday, too. I think that that's a huge factor because TCU, who got in because they were most deserving last year. I don't think that there was anybody, and I mean, I guess you could argue they weren't even most deserving since they lost their conference title game, but they went 12-0 in the regular season, and they were the feel-good story, and they got in. And I really do think if we'd taken 2 SEC teams, it would have been a better, outcome long term. It would not have been a massive blowout like it was, and I do think that was still on people's minds.
There was no way 2 SEC teams would get in this year. I can't see
No,
not this year. The field was too strong this year. But if like TCU, last year's TCU this year, when they lost the Big 12 title game, they would have been 7th or 8th. Okay, this year, where last year they lost the Big 12 title game and they were seeded 3rd. I mean, the field this year was so much stronger.
Right. And that certainly makes the case for expanding the field. And I think as we move, but what's ironic, guys, about expanding the field at this particular point in time, we know what's going to happen. We know that the SEC and the Pac and the Big Ten are going to dominate in terms of slots for the playoff. We know that's going to happen. And what is that going to be like?
I mean, truly, it's just going to be more SEC teams. I honestly, with the playoff expanding, I will be shocked if the end result ends up being much different than what we're used to seeing, though. I think it just means we get football, and I guess more teams get a shot. But more than likely, we're going to arrive at the same conclusion, whether it was 4 teams or 2 teams.
If we do quick math, all right, 5 conference champions. So the ACC, Big 12, and whoever are going to get their bid. You're probably going to get every year 4 SEC, 4 Big 10. So now we're at 11. And then basically we're going to see, is there an ACC or Big 12 at large worthy? And if not, then either the Big 10 or the SEC is going to get a 5th team. I mean, but you have to figure going forward, how long is this? 7 years, 10 years? How long are they doing this? I mean, I would have to bet every year that the Big 10 and the SEC are going to get 4 each.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and particularly, Clemson needs to come back. Florida State needs to keep playing well, but yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting every year, and
people are going to complain about SEC bias when that many teams get in. I mean, this is tale as old as time, right?
Yeah, well, SEC bias means people are biased towards the SEC because they win a lot.
That's true.
SEC dominant,
and it's undeniable. As Casey Stengel once said, you can look it up. So.
Yeah, exactly. So in the limited time we have, I know, Alan, you may have to cut here pretty quick. I want to get to a couple other storylines, and one of them is the book that Tony just wrote. It is really an interesting take on what it was like in the times of small towns in Georgia and Greene County, even Marion County here, when integration took place. And the dynamics of how that changed football and changed the teams. And Tony, your book's out now, I think, or coming out, and they should get it if you can for Christmas. It's a terrific read about the culture around a high school football program. And if you haven't been to Georgia, or Florida, you don't understand how important high school football. Talk about your book, Tony.
Well, thank you, buddy. The title is The 19 of Greene, and what it means is I played on the first ever integrated football team in the history of my high school in the fall of 1970, long time ago. Greene County, Georgia, about halfway between Atlanta and Augusta on I-20, and we had 19 players. After merging a white school and a black school, we only had 19 players, 12 white, 7 black. And with those 19 guys, we went to work. We won 7 out of our last 8. Got into the region championship where we played mighty Gainesville, Georgia high school, the Red Elephants, and lost 13-0. But this book is not about football. It's about the fact that 52 years after we played our last game together, my friend Charles Turner, our African-American quarterback, he and I are very, very good friends. As a matter of fact, we did a book event last night together in Eatonton, Georgia. It's about relationships and how football built those relationships. And it was quite. I interviewed. There's 16 of us still alive. I interviewed the other 15 players, 12 in person, and teachers and coaches and all that. And it's just a book about. It does have a remember the Titans feel. Of course, my coach was not Denzel Washington, though. It was Charlton Vesey. But it's really about the relationships and the fact that football built these relationships that I've got with these guys 52 years after we played together.
Awesome.
I look forward to reading it. All your books, Tony, are a good read, and folks can go to Amazon and they can probably go other places. Barnes and Noble. Where else can they buy it, Tony?
Well, Amazon's your best way. Just go on and do a search of the 19 of Green. Do a search, and they'll take you right there. And I think they're still giving you a nice little discount if you order online right away.
Tell me no, Tony. I'll give it to you for half price. Oh.
There you go.
Tony, it can't. I can't help but feel that it's so ironic, the theme of your book, and that it's coming out given kind of where we are in college football at this moment. It almost feels like with the transfer portal that the ability to build these lifelong relationships is almost over now.
Yeah. No, you're right, Allie, because guys are going to be leaving as soon as they get a chance. As soon as they get a better NIL deal, they're going to hop in the transfer portal and go do it. And I feel sad about that, because the time that I played football in high school and to build the relationships with these guys. I mean, I didn't even have a black friend when we merged the schools in the fall of 1970, because it was just, that was the way the South was. I did not have, and Charles became one of my very, very best friends. And if I had never played football with him and the other guys, that relationship never would have happened. And so I do feel for the players, because they're, hey, young man, go make your money, go do what you can, support your family. That's great, but don't leave everything behind in the pursuit of the dollars.
I will say that a lot of people are making a business decision here, but like Dylan Gabriel is not. The folks who cover Oklahoma have said that Dylan was kind of tapped on the shoulder early in the year and said, listen, we got a 5-star who's ready. This is your last year here. So Dylan's leaving because he wasn't going to play. And McCord the same way at Ohio State. I mean, when Ryan Day wouldn't even commit to him for the bowl game, he said, my future here may not be great. So they're leaving for playing time.
Right. And you're going to, David, you're right. You're going to see a lot more of that, because coaches are saying, I got to protect me. Okay. And if these guys are going to book, I've got to be, and I think coaches should be honest with players. If they're not going to play, then they need to know that. They need to know that that's, and we'll help you find someplace else to go. But players need to know why they're not playing. And the coach needs to be upfront about that. And if he needs to go somewhere else, then that's what he needs to do.
Hey, Tony, a couple of national storylines here I'd like to jump on real fast. Let me just do a quick read. Hang on for a second. Tell you about Titan MRI. They're worth the short drive to Gainesville. No insurance, no problem. You can pay with cash or a card. Same-day scheduling available. Start feeling better today, because Titan MRI is North Central Florida's premier independent MRI facility. Come see why hundreds of patients are visiting our Gainesville location from Ocala, Marion County, and the villages. That's TitanMRI.com. All right, the most absurd coaching rumor, Tony, that you've heard. There've been a bunch of them, bunch of things going on. The latest one is Coach O coming to coach the defensive line in Florida. Never going to happen in a million years, Allie.
Go Gators. Yeah, go Gators. That
Listen,
was, I had not read that, buddy. That's news to me. So
Yeah, that's on all the message boards and stuff. Allie, go ahead.
it is all over the message boards. I can't imagine that it happens, but I also can't tell you that I'd be opposed to it happening if somehow some magic was worked there. At least would bring some fire to our sidelines.
Well, he would be
well,
able to
he is
coach
a
for
very
nothing.
good defensive line coach. He's a very good defensive line coach and a very good recruiter. And he's fashioned out a very nice career by being able to do those two things.
He's got plenty of money. He can coach for nothing, you know. So with that buyout he got, anything there, David, in terms of coaches that you've heard about anything that seems valid? Florida seems to have theirs lined up. If you believe some of the stuff I've been reading, Allie, what do you think, David? Have you heard any good coaching rumors for anybody?
I just find it interesting what's going on with the coordinators. You know, how both Kansas and K-State coordinators got plucked by Penn State and Texas A&M. I thought the USC defensive coordinator choice was interesting because I had been told it was going to be the former Mississippi State coach. By the way, where's he landed? Okay, if I'm the Gators, I'm all over him.
I'm with you on that.
I'm all over him. Sorry if I got assigned the current defensive coordinator. I don't know what to tell you, but he's better. But you know, I find that interesting, the plucking of the coordinators and who are going from one Power 5 school to the other. I don't know how much head coaching movement we're going to have. I mean, a couple guys are retiring after the bowls. You know, Bronco Mendenhall at New Mexico is interesting, but not going to make any, you know, waves. You know, I don't know if a head coach is getting fired here or resigns in the next month.
All right. Go ahead, Allie.
I was going to say a name that I keep hearing for our DBs coach is Will Harris.
Yeah, he
is assistant DBs coach for the Chargers currently, played at USC, was at Washington for a couple of years. You know, kind of young guy, could recruit the West Coast. So I guess that could be positive. I think my thing with Florida is, did UF fire these coaches because they thought they had somebody lined up and it fell through, or is Napier that bad with timing? Because at this point, there's coaches that have been fired after hours and they've already replaced them. And generally, you don't want to make a firing right before the early signing day unless you can tell these kids who is going to be coaching them instead. So I mean, and I guess when the hire is revealed, we'll kind of be able to put the pieces together. But like the fact that nothing has happened when we fired these coaches over a week ago is kind of wild.
And I can't see how this is helping them with the portal. I mean, you know, if nothing else, if you bring in the four of us, we have ties to certain players. In theory, if we could each bring in one, that would be helpful. So I can't imagine that this vacancies are helping them with the portal either.
It's not helping with their current class either.
Right.
You know, Xavier Filson is taking a visit to Texas, an official visit to Texas this upcoming weekend. I mean, that's your 5-star safety. It's your third highest ranked guy in your recruiting class. And can you blame him? He doesn't know he's going to coach him.
Yeah. Yep. Let's let Tony get off here, but I wanted to say this. I'm still a little surprised that Corey Raymond and Sean Spencer went so quickly when they both were good recruiters and had commits in that pool. I'm not sure what happened, but I've heard one sounds like a valid reason, maybe a little bit of a rumor, with a young defensive coordinator, Austin Armstrong. They don't agree philosophically with some of the things he's doing. I can see that being a reason, Allie. I know you're looking at kind of funny, but how that might be a divide there, that he's just too young for them.
Yeah, but then you're putting all your eggs, so to speak, in the basket of a 30-year-old defensive coordinator who, you know, we saw what the defense looked like this year. So that seems like a risky move. And, you know, you saw how fast Coach Chaos got snapped up by Texas A&M. I mean, clearly other people don't think that he's washed up. And they are your two best recruiters. So you better have a plan if you're willing to make that type of move.
Let's get a view from 10,000 feet. Tony, give us your take on what you're hearing about Florida and Napier. Probably not too much. Well, give us your take on what you know.
Well, I think I have to do it from 20,000 feet. I have not heard a whole lot, but Allie's right. You particularly in this environment with the transfer portal, and the NIL and all that, if you fire a coach, you need to have him ready to go the same day. In other words, you have it done where you're not going to fire a coach and then go looking for another coach. He should be in the fold already. So I will agree that is a little unusual to, particularly now with the early signing date coming up. Wow, that makes it tough.
Yeah. Well, when you figure it out, Tony, write us a note. Let us know what's going on down there, right? Because
I will do it, guys.
Lost. Great having you on, Tony. Good luck with the book, and we'll catch up again in a few weeks.
All right, thank you.
The great Tony Barnhart. Appreciate it very much. That'll be a good book, guys. I'd want to read that. I like his writing. He's a
just ordered it.
I was going to say
right.
that's stocking stuff. I think I'm going to. I have 2 people in mind for that book. That sounds awesome.
It's an excellent book. I agree with you. Get his stuff off of David's forehead. Yeah. So all right. So let's take a quick dive in on coaches. Allie, you talked about one. What else are you hearing about replacement for those 3 guys?
Honestly, those 2 guys. I have not heard a whole lot of names, with a whole lot of substance. Unfortunately, Harris is the only one that, I've heard the Coach O stuff, but none of it has been anybody that's credible, so to speak. And that's scary, right? They're not good at playing it this close to the vest, which makes me think there's just nothing to conceal at the moment, which is not great, and signing day is coming up incredibly quickly. Florida needs to fill this class. They need to be able to tell portal guys who's going to be coaching them. We've already seen guys commit, from the transfer portal, not to Florida, but to other places. This happens so incredibly fast. And, Florida chose not to host recruits last weekend, which I thought was, I don't know, an interesting decision. I don't know. This weekend, supposedly they've got some guys coming on campus. Let's hope it goes well. It just feels like they didn't learn a whole lot from last year's misses, and that is concerning to me. Hopefully I'm wrong.
David and Allie both, Billy's, what we said a million times, they measure twice, cut one sky. He's slow to move on some things, which I guess can look deliberative. But some people feel like he needs to be a little quicker on the uptake on things. Like last year in the transfer portal, what took so long, and why is he taking so long on these replacements? He doesn't communicate what his message is to the fans at all. And sometimes you think that sort of stubbornness, that deliberance can be used against him, David.
Well, not to sound repetitive from stuff that we've said the last few weeks, but Allie and I were both pounding the table saying, okay, use this 5-7 season to your advantage. You don't have to worry about a bowl game. Okay. Have your house in order. Whatever staff changes you're going to make, okay, make them. All right. Hit the ground running. You got to nail down this high school class and hit the portal while people are worried about bowl games and what have you. And so, I guess proof's in the pudding, and he's got another week and a half or so to prove us wrong. But right now it looks as if it's last year all over again. And, I've been pounding comparing Florida to Norvell and Florida State, for 4 months. And what did Mike Norvell do after his year 2 when he went 5-7? Okay. He crushed it quickly. In high school, portal, coaching changes, and if I'm a Gator fan, I'm like, oh man, God, Billy, I kept my mouth shut all year. I was just, God, could you just do what Allie's been writing about and talking about, and even this Moulton guy, come on, move it along here.
Yeah.
Playing time and money. Those are the 2 things transfer kids want. We have both of them. Move fast. If they were good enough to start on pretty much any Division I college football team, they're good enough to start on either line at Florida, for sure. Sign them.
Another name there that's come up, Willie Corn, is Liberty, right?
Yeah, Liberty. I just haven't heard that from anybody who I personally know hears inside information.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's not true or that others haven't. I just haven't heard that personally from somebody that I trust.
You talk about Sunbelt Billy. You start hiring the offensive coordinators or whatever from Liberty. Although Liberty had a great year, I'll give them credit. They did have that, but I don't know.
Liberty,
what do you think?
I don't know why these coaches weren't. If Come on, he knew he was getting rid of at least two. How did he not have the replacements lined up?
A good
I mean,
question.
come on, he had time here. He did. Not, I mean, he had time before they played Florida State. I mean, come on, all the other staffs do it. I mean, come on, man. I mean, he's acting like he's got a 6-year contract, and then he knows for sure that he's never going to be fired. I mean, where is the sense of urgency?
Allie, that's 4 come-ons from David. That's a record for him. I've never heard him use 4 come-ons in a row like that. So
I'm editing myself as I go along. I'm not I didn't grow up a Gator fan. I mean, I can only imagine deep down how Allie feels, because Allie's not just a reporter. Allie's a fan. I mean, the fan in Allie, I'm guessing you want to just take your job and put it aside and just scream into the camera for 12 seconds and then put your job hat back on.
Yeah, the hard thing is that I like Billy Napier as a person. I want him to be the guy to be successful here. But I just am so frustrated at the lack of movement, the seemingly lack of urgency. And when you meet him, you think that he has zero ego, but I'm beginning to think that can't possibly be true, because how can you not see the things that everybody else is seeing? Essentially, like, I'm shocked. If you're going to fire anybody, how do we still have the same 2 offensive line coaches? How do you not get an offensive coordinator? It's only firing yourself, essentially. How do you not have a special teams coordinator? I've been told that we're going to have a different strength and conditioning staff, but that strength and conditioning coach is going to be moved to somewhere else on the staff and be given a different title. Why? It makes no sense to me. This is a results driven business. If you don't get the results, you shouldn't feel bad moving on to the next guy.
Well, the frustration is starting to mount. Now Allie's going after him, so when she takes off the gloves, it's getting serious. All right, guys, any final thoughts here on? We didn't even talk about the games. Are we not all rooting for a final Alabama-Texas final?
I am.
David?
Well, I'll say this. In a strange way, I think the committee has done Michigan a favor here, because Michigan has a chance to win the national championship by beating Ohio State, Alabama, and Texas back to back to back. And if they do that, despite everything that they didn't do, who knew, what have you, there isn't a college football fan in the country that's not going to go, well, listen, do I think they cheated? Okay, at some point over the last 2.5 years, I do. But they didn't cheat to beat Ohio State, Alabama, and Texas. So you know what? They're a worthy national champion. Okay, whatever happens to Harbaugh happens to Harbaugh. But in a strange way, I actually think the committee is taking the asterisk and the tarnish off of Michigan if they're able to win 2 more games.
Mrs. Peeking Wilbur, final thought.
Listen, I'm excited. I think there's going to be 4 really good playoff games. Interested to see Georgia and Florida State. We're watching people opt out left and right, so it's going to be a shell of itself. But Florida State had an opportunity there to show the world why they were wrong, and it appears that they're not taking that opportunity by the people that are choosing not to participate and whatever else. But I hate the way that they got there, but I do think they came to the right conclusion.
Well done, sweet and sour. Nice job, Allie. David, thanks very much. See you next week, same time.
Take
Sounds
care.
Good, Eddie. Right. Bye, David.
Thanks to
Bye,
our
Allie.
friend Tony Barnhart as well. Good comments. Don't forget his book, 19 and Green. All right, I'll wrap it up. I want to tell you about Renstar Medical Research, one of our regular sponsors here. We're so grateful for their support over the years. We're grateful for what they do in our community as well. They have a high-quality, patient-centered clinical research facility right here in Ocala. They bring cutting-edge clinical research trials to Ocala in areas like Alzheimer's disease, dementia, psoriasis, osteoarthritis, migraines, fibromyalgia, along with many other things that affect us in our community right here. You can take part in some of these clinical trials, which gives them information they need to be able to send out to pharmaceutical and biomedical companies throughout the medical industry to help with our health. So check them out. Go to renstar.net. You might be able to volunteer for this. If you qualify, you could get perhaps compensated for time and travel. Renstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers for the health questions of today. I'm Buddy Martin. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Back tomorrow night with the Orange and Blue Blood Thursday.